Welcome back to the Pumped On Property Show, where we are going into part one of a two-part series with my colleague Hayden. Now, Hayden is 27. He has been working at Pumped On Property for almost 3 years now. He's helped hundreds of our clients settle on their investment properties, and he's an extremely successful investor himself, purchasing 4 properties before the age of 26, which is just a huge feat. Now, in today's podcast, we talk about his journey to date, where it all started, where the interest for property investment really began, how he actually got started at such a young age, and also how we ended up developing the strategy, executing that strategy. So it's really fun to learn a little bit more about what such a successful person can do at such a young age with the right habits and with the right goals in life. So super excited to get stuck into today's podcast with Hayden from Pumped On Property. Far out, man. It has been such a long time since last time you came on to the Pumped On Property Show. So thanks so much for getting back in here, Haydo.
No stress. I'm excited. It's been 4 years, so it's flown by.
4 years. I don't even know if that podcast episode is still available on the channel, because we did a whole rebrand a couple of years ago, sort of. And I'd be interested to see if that's actually still there. But we can sort of recap on everything anyway today. But today, guys, we've got Hayden, one of the team at Pumped On Property. He's one of the head buyer's agents. He's been working with the company for almost 3 years now and has supported hundreds of our clients throughout the settlement process of their property investment journey, which is, in my opinion, the most stressful part of purchasing a property, right? Like, once you get that signed contract back from the agent and you got to, work your ass off over the next 30 to 40 days to settle on the property, hey?
For sure. It's a pretty daunting process, like so much you got to work through, working with 4 or 5 different partners, tons of paperwork, stress, excited, scared, cop all of it, so it's good fun.
What do you find as though is like some of the common things that come up during that under contract phase from once you purchase a property through to settlement? Like, what are the things that people get a little bit more fearful of or get a little bit more emotional about? Because I know me personally, from the 4 properties that I've bought, about once a week throughout that 4 to 5 week journey, I freak the F out. So like, obviously you've helped probably over 300 clients now settle on their properties from, under contract through. So what are some of the common things that you've experienced that people sort of have to deal with at that phase?
Yeah, good question. And like you said, everyone else is probably pretty similar to what you said. Like, they have a little bit of a freak out once a week, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest freakouts, like for me personally as well, being a client and what most of our clients experience, biggest one would be just second guessing, like, because it's an exciting call talking about a property, you're getting it all accepted, but then you're just sitting there that night, like, all quiet, reflecting, knowing all that money's going to come out. Like, it's a huge step. Like, a lot of people have been saving for years to be able to make this decision. So yeah, that second guessing early on in the piece is pretty common. Another big sort of scary point is the building and pest report. As we know, that's super overwhelming. Like bloody 100 pages, heaps of items. So chatting through that is pretty daunting for people. Some of the working with the solicitor, they've sort of got their own language in a way. It's a bit technical, so that can be a bit overwhelming. But all in all, like, a few things there that scare people, but it's matched with a lot of excitement too. Like, it's a big decision.
Yeah.
It's going to shape their future. So yeah, normally get a little bit of fear, but mostly excitement. Yeah, I noticed that as well with my properties and with working with some of our clients as well at that phase. It's just this whole mix of emotions, and then you've got all of these different partners that you're working with. You've got your building and pest inspector, but then you've got your property manager looking at the property. You've got your insurance broker working on insurance. You've got your solicitor working through the contract and looking at their additional searches. And then you've also got your property manager trying to secure finance. So you've got like 5, and then the sellers to deal with at the same time to manage them through that process too. You've got like 5, 6 different intermediaries all coming together, and this is why buying property can get quite stressful and overwhelming. But one thing that you've been really good at supporting all of our clients with is just coming back to the big picture and not getting caught in just the
little bits and pieces of like, oh no, there's more damage than we anticipated with whatever it might be, some cracked tiles in the bathroom or like a cracked downpipe or something. And it's like, we can get fixated on these small little items sometimes that actually don't impact the decision much at all. But for some reason, our monkey minds just make it feel as though it's the hardest thing to go through, hey?
For sure, that's definitely the case, because a lot of that stuff in my stage of the process is a bit like, it's pretty small to some degree. Like, we want to make sure the big stuff's ticked off, but when you're talking like $1,000 or $2,000 extra on a building pest negotiation or some like little fees you might pay here to amend the contract, it's like, it's a thing, but it's not like on the scale of $1 million property or a $500K property, it's not all that much. And I was the same, like you can latch on to those little things, get a bit scared, try to find an excuse like to talk yourself out of it. It's natural to do it at a time like that. So that's where I've tried to grow over the last few years at working with the team is when I used to hear a bit of fear from clients, it would like transfer onto me and then I'd be like, get all scared and try to like sort of talk them out of it. Whereas now it's like, it's helped a lot more trying to just listen and understand and like just understand how they feel and take it on board and be like, I can understand how you're feeling. What I've actually found is this, and really try to, listen and hear what people are saying instead of like when they start to talk themselves out of it, instead of being like, no, it's all good. Like just listen and understand.
100%, man. And like, I can relate to that so much because yesterday I had just one of those weird days. It was the full moon day, and I don't know, for some reason I get a little bit weird around the full moon. But like at the end of the day, I just needed to vent. And I just was like talking to Tay and she's trying to solve the problem. And I'm like, I don't mean to sound rude right now, Tay, but I'm pretty sure I just need to vent. I just need to vent at the moment. And sometimes you just need to do that. You need a soundboard to just talk to and just get that shit out of your mind and into the world, because sometimes that's all you need is just somebody to listen.
Yeah.
And that's like what you've been great at. But, obviously it's been a long journey for you, right? You've been property investing for 10 years now and you're only 27 years of age. Just so for everybody out there listening, Hayden started his investment journey a long time ago. Grew up in South Australia. You're 27 years old now. You've bought 4 properties over the last 10 years.
Yeah, 4.
You now have your wife, Melise, and your little baby boy, Ollie, who's only 4 or 5 months old now.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about where it all started for you? If you've got any books that you stumbled across, podcasts, any conversations that you had with family, friends, colleagues, aunties, uncles, tell us about where it all began for you.
Yeah, sweet. So it began pretty early for me, towards probably the back end of year 12 as I was finishing school. A lot of kids these days trying to figure out what the hell we want to do with our life. So many different options, decisions. You're like, bloody hell, what do I do? And I honestly didn't know and couldn't make a decision. So I had a gap year after year 12, just to try to figure some stuff out. With the investing side of things with all my family, like a family are reasonably well off, but it's not in like a sense of successful investing. It's more just like we're from a farm, 6,000 acres, like land's going up heaps. It's not as much like we've bought houses, bought shares. It's more just generational farming. So we're in a solid financial position as a family. So I was never driven as such to be like, we're growing up rough, I need to like make a change. But I sort of, loved the way that my parents grew up. I loved the way I was parented, and I sort of wanted that freedom for myself. Started to get an interest in investing through just books, podcasts, the standard Rich Dad Poor Dad everyone says. The gap year in Bordertown where I was living, we had...
Got producer Ben in to give me a cup of tea.
In that gap year I worked at like a bakehouse, literally just cooking pies and pasties. It was
love that.
A bit of a piss take, heaps for the boys. But the boss there was a bloke who sort of had a couple businesses and sort of 6 or 7 properties in the area. So I was
the guy who ran the pie store.
Yeah. So
a legend.
Worked a few hours a day, just popped in to say good day, and I sort of was really attached to that and started hanging out with him more. And he was probably the person who got me heading in this direction. So then at the end of that gap year, the plan was to, like, I want to get into this space. At the time, pretty ignorant, pretty narrow-minded, had no idea of the different options. I was like, accountant, like, that's numbers, that's sort of, and it's something to do with that.
You're a 17-year-old, just plain and simple.
Yeah, so I was like, well, we're doing that. I'll learn some numbers and I'll be bloody doing good investments and I'll be retired at 30, whatever the hell I was thinking then.
Dude, you're not that far off, right? But
so yeah, we moved to Adelaide. I started a 3-year degree, and in my first year of uni, I met my now wife, who was into her second year of a 4-year degree.
Yeah.
So we were going to be finishing at the same time. That period, 2014, 15, 16, just getting through uni, right? Like, it was basically living the life of the uni person, no money, like playing sport, going out, all that stuff. But then there was just always that like 5% of me that just spent some time like continuing to read and learn, and I was really into the investing space. But none of my sort of crew and mates were, so it was always just me in a room by myself listening to stuff, or when I was driving. So I never really had the crowd around me to like make that a big thing at that point.
It's pretty cool to see that you've actually been able to do that though, because like at that age in your early 20s, everybody's just figuring it out. A lot of people are going traveling overseas. A lot of people are blowing cash on partying. You know, people don't have that foresight to think forward. You know, I think about the average age of people that we work with is probably about 35 through to 50, which is just totally normal with property investing. So you've always been a bit of an outlier. And is that just an innate thing? Like, it's just a part of your personality type, or do you feel as though it's kind of been passed down from like having a successful family, running a farm and running businesses and things like that? Where do you think that desire to like sacrifice going and playing beer pong with the boys in the dorm room or, you know, sitting down and reading that book or listening to that podcast or, you know, diving into some YouTube videos or something like that?
Yeah, it's tricky to pinpoint where that started. Like, it was never felt like it was a sacrifice to me. Like, it always felt like at that stage of life, just doing things that interest you, that give you purpose, that you enjoy. And to me, like, I just enjoyed like learning and growing. I do think coming from an environment, growing up on the farm where you're in a small like community, where there's like more freedom, there's less of like the material flashy stuff. It was always just, we were financially well off, but it wouldn't look like that. Like, we were just sort of hanging out on the farm, getting all dirty, playing around. It was just like, and then, I wanted to create that for myself and my family, just having that upbringing myself. So it started pretty young. And then the big turning point was at the end of uni, at the end of 2016. We were just back on the farm. Melissa and I both finished uni, didn't have a dollar to our name, sitting there around a bonfire, like wondering what we're going to do. And our options then, this is probably the key decision we made, was we could go back to Adelaide, get jobs and live, but the cost of living was going to be much higher there, and Melissa's income was going to be probably about 50% of what it could be if we went to like a regional town and did a lot of on-call work.
Yeah, right.
So we made the call, like, our farm's 3 hours east of Adelaide, and there's a job that come up for my wife, like Melissa, in 3 hours north of Adelaide, up in this like ghetto town, like rough as.
What one's that called?
Port Augusta.
Port Augusta, that's right. I remember when Mum did a trip around Australia, she stopped in at Port Augusta, and she said it was great, like it was cool to go experience it, but she didn't feel the safest.
No, it wasn't safe. Like, scared to like walk to your car at night time on your own type of field. But it was the best thing we ever done. Like,
love that.
Simply to explain was, we went up there. Melissa's work was full-time work. Plus there was 3 radiographers there, and basically 1 in 3 of them had to be on call at any given point. So she was taking the on-call work a third of the weeknights, a third of the weekends, and all the on-call stuff you get paid like double time for 3 hours for each like 20-minute call out. So her salary pretty much doubled. I started as an accountant, absolutely hated it. I'm not doing this. Sitting in a little cubicle, like stressed out of my mind. Like, this.
What type of work were you doing? Were you just doing like, you know, end of year tax return stuff, or?
Yeah, it was like pretty much just punching in the numbers for like small businesses doing their tax.
Yep.
Bill all my hours to it, and then like the boss would come in, fix all the mistakes, just write off all my hours, and I'd be like, felt like flat out.
Yeah.
Like, just hated it so much. Wasn't in a great space then at all, to be honest. Like, just hated it, so stressed. So pulled the pin on that, big call. Just didn't want it. Just hit breaking point. Like, went in the boss's office, like crying. I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah, fair
enough. Pretty rough time. Then from there, we literally just because it freed up the mental space, like to go into more of the investing stuff and what I really want. It was like I felt like a totally new person, and just picked up jobs, like 3 jobs I was working. I would work like 7:30 till 3:30, being a supervisor on site at the local like hotel in Port Augusta. Then I would drive straight from there to clean 2 kindies from 4 till 6.
Wow.
And then I would drive from there to Woolworths and be like a night filler from sort of 7 till midnight.
Wow.
Did that, which obviously like still wasn't great money, but the combination of the hours got me to some sort of income.
Yeah.
Same with Melissa's income, and beauty of those, especially those first couple of jobs, was it was just doing stuff with my hands. I didn't have to think about it. So that's when I just really got the hours in of like listening to podcasts through those years. And that 2017, 18, 19 period, those 3 years we were in Port Augusta. We had a super low cost of living. Like we saved, simply to put it, like we met you guys sort of halfway along that journey when we were there, and just thought this is what we wanted to do. And then we simply pretty much just saved like 300K in 3 years to put 100K down on 3 different joints, and that's what we did. And the first one, I think we engaged you guys after we were in Port Augusta for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Met Ben, Crystal.
Yeah.
Loved it, really vibed with it. And we at a point when we got to the savings to buy our first house in late 2018, which was in North Brizzy, like 570K buy. It was a capital growth focused plan. And that's where it started. That was the first one we bought, yeah.
Isn't it interesting to just see like how the journey of life unfolds over time as well? It's like, you know, it would have been really easy to go to Adelaide. You probably had friends and family that you knew that were living there, you know, that you could have had a bit more of a community with, but you guys decided to sacrifice what you wanted now for what you wanted most, and that enabled you to, you know, transition into this regional town where your cost of living was extremely low, and you were able to build up those deposits super fast and obviously capitalise on that opportunity, and not just like living in that tiny little regional town and then not really enjoying the opportunity of it afterwards. And then now you've been able to kind of change your lifestyle quite significantly to be, you know, in a place where you prefer living and things like that. So I guess to kind of come back a little bit, you know, when you started, you know, reading all of these books, listening to all of these podcasts and learning more about property investing, how did you go about developing the strategy that you were going to implement, you know, back in sort of 2017, 2018, 2019, because, you know, that's where it begins, right? That's where you start with your foundations. That's where you start building your portfolio. So what motivated you to purchase the properties that you purchased, and what sort of shaped and how did you shape that strategy that you were going to implement?
Yeah, good question. Like, coming across you guys is obviously a pretty big influence in that, but even before I spoke to you guys, I'm sort of like a pretty simple guy. I don't really care about too much extravagant building, and like there's books out there buying 100 properties and all this stuff. Like people are pushing that you need this and that. I never felt that. I was always like, I've got a few years like that. All my mates were giving me slack saying I'm just like giving up those years going away. But for me, I really loved it. Really loved learning about this space, and I've always been a simple guy that's stuck to like fundamentals, taking a macro long-term view. It was never like flashy this, like quickly get in a day trade here or try to do a flip here. It was always just like, what's like the simplest big picture thing I can do? Because I don't want this to be like controlling my life. Like I just want it to be a part where I can make a few good decisions over a 3 to 4 year period now while we don't have kids and our savings rate's extremely high. Make some quality decisions over that period, and then we can do what we want to get married, move up here, start a family, and that's exactly how it has played out. But looking back, it was, just come across you. I had that philosophy to begin with, and then I come across you guys, and it was just like a 2 property strategy, 3 property strategy. It wasn't like this crazy out there thing, and it just, I guess, just related to me. And I've been a fan of, instead of spending all my time trying to figure it all out myself, I spend a lot of my time finding the right people to work with and then putting my trust in them. And that's what I felt at the time. I had a rough idea of my philosophy and the way I look at things, and then saw the team pumped and it aligned with that, and I just put sort of, not blind faith, but put faith in that, and I spent the time finding you guys first. Like, I didn't speak to a heap of buyers agents, but spoke to a few different ones, just got like a bit of a different feel out of them and really related to you guys. And basically, yeah, I looked back at the notes that Ben wrote on the first call when I spoke to him, and it was like pretty much exactly how the last 5 years has played out. It's been pretty amazing to look back. It was like buy 2 properties, move to Sunny Coast, like start a family, buy your own home. And I'm like, holy shit, it's just like been exactly that. So it doesn't feel like it's been like years of just mess, like mistakes. It's just been like, we've got to a position where we can buy, we found the right people and just trusted the process, and it's all sort of played out at the moment, yeah.
That's fascinating, hey. But, you know, I think you say that it sort of unfolded easier, but it's hard to put that trust in other people, especially at that age, and detach yourself from those decisions and just go, okay, well, this is the right decision. But it's like, you know, you realise that there was a really high value opportunity up here in Brisbane to start accumulating some properties due to the stage of the cycle that Brisbane was at that point in time. You know, you found somebody that you could align with that, you know, supported in developing that strategy and acquiring those first 2 high quality investment properties, and, you know, you absolutely smashed it. Like, I look at those properties now and, you know, both of them have almost doubled in value from what you purchased them for back in sort of 18, 19, 20, which is pretty rare to see around Australia, especially in the capital cities. I know a lot of regional markets have done really well over that period of time, but, you know, by just slowing down to speed up, it's enabled you to just really purchase 4 properties. You know, you've gotten rid of 1, you're just holding the 3 now. You've got 1 in inner city Brisbane, which is about, 10, 11 Ks from the city. You've got 1 on the northeast beaches, which is about probably a kilometre from the water and about 25 Ks from the city, that's got 2 incomes on that property with the house and the granny flat out the back, renting out separately. And then you've got your house on the Sunshine Coast in Curramundi, in a beautiful suburb, like walking distance to cafes, beach, lake, parks, shops, absolutely everything. So you've got a real premium blue chip portfolio now, and there's the, you know, you can see how it's going to enable you to kind of achieve those longer term goals. So, you know, I guess over the last 10 years, and this is a tough one, like, what are some of the biggest lessons that you feel as though you've learned? And, you know, if you were talking to maybe your 17, 18-year-old self, what feedback or what would you tell them to do at this part of their life?
Yeah, good question. To begin with, like, people coming out of school, which I struggled with, was just like figuring out what the hell to do. And the biggest lesson looking back now that I could change would be just to do something that's remotely close to like what you're interested in. Just don't sit there trying to spend years figuring it all out, coming up with the perfect plan. It's like, find something you enjoy and you love, just go get a job there or start something, or just have a crack, because it's like, even if that doesn't end up being the thing, it's like that opens up doors to the next thing, and it's like, that's what I've found. Like, I eventually made the call to be an accountant. It's not the right one, but it's like that led me to like being at uni and meeting Melissa. It led me to reading this. It led me to like now doing those other jobs where I could free up time to like learn more about investing, and it led me to working at Pumped. And it's like, that's one of the best things I've done, is just figure out something close to where you want to be and just go do it, and just trust that it'll lead to the next thing if it's not the right thing.
Love that.
Outside of that, another big thing would be, you can get anxious if you're for me, I get super anxious if I'm attached to the short to even medium term results and progress. I've been the biggest lesson, like, life is, everyone says life's short, but life's also like long. It's a lot of time. Like, it doesn't feel like I've done heaps right now, and I've still achieved a lot by 27, and it's like, and it doesn't feel like we've bloody ran like a hair pace and gone too crazy. It just feels like I've been cruising along as a turtle, making some good decisions, and I'm still young. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned, is to not be attached to the short-term result, because it just makes you do dumb things. Had a few little mistakes through uni, like with a bit of trading that just never worked out. The properties that I've bought have done really well, but I'm completely fine even if they hadn't, because I've always just been like, I actually don't care what happens in the first like 1, 2, 5, 10 years. It's always like, property's my thing. Like, I've specified in that. I trust that it's like, people need a place to live. Like, I trust looking at history and what it's done. it takes all the stress away the more I can just not be attached to an outcome in the short to medium term.
Yeah.
Just like make the right call, that best call you can at the time, and then like just trust and let it be. Action like doesn't also always mean accomplishment. It's like, that's a big thing. Everyone thinks they want to just figure this out, come up with a new plan, a new plan, a new plan. It's just like you do all this stuff and it ends up all messy and then you end up in a worse spot anyway.
Yeah. I find like an analogy for that for me is like the old, when I used to like go surfing with the boys, you'd go to one beach and you'd check that and then you'd be like, oh, the grass could be greener or the surf might be better at the next break. So you drive another 5 minutes to the next beach. Nah, it's crap. Next beach, next beach. And then at the end, you end up going back to the first one. And it's like sometimes we try and overcomplicate things. And sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And it's just like, if you can just have that perspective from the beginning that it will all work out over time if you trust the process and just take action, which you did, you know, it will all sort of work out in the long run. And we can't control short-term situations. We know long-term property's been one of the top performing assets in Australia, and it will probably continue to move in that direction, knowing that obviously the private ownership of land, the fact that we can invest in it, we live in it, and obviously the fact that we want it, like the Aussie government wants to get the Australian population to over 60 million people, you know, they're going to need a roof over their head and things like that. So you can have that blind faith almost in the long-term strategy, but still you can, you know, pick the eyes out of markets to do that a little bit better than the average as well. Yeah,
exactly right. And going back on the previous point, like the grass isn't green on the other side, it's greener where you water it.
That's so true,
It's the right quote that I've lived by. And like a lesson for me about, I've probably changed on over the years regarding diversification. Like everyone pushes it, like diversify to be safe. I've personally taken my position on that now is I think diversification's better to protect your wealth once you've got your goals. I think there's a quote that I read that's specification is the key to building wealth, diversification is the key to protecting it.
Love that.
So it's like for me, my philosophy I've chosen property. I understand it. Like I understand compound growth. I understand like smart leverage. I understand like the tenant, the taxman, how they can cover a lot of the costs. So my approach has been, I want to learn that space better than the average person that like, I already believe in it. So if I can get an outperform result by knowing more and doing better again, that made sense. So I've probably put around 90 to 95% of my invested, like my capital that I've had into property. And then I've had another little philosophy of like 5 to 10% of my remaining wealth into stuff that's a bit more like speculative, a bit more risky.
Sure.
Something that's like, if it goes to zero, like it sucks, but I'm fine. Bit of fun. Like it's got bigger like potential, but bigger potential for loss as well. So that's what I've sort of done. I've got my nest egg in property. That's the thing. That's all I really care about. Bit of play money in like crypto shares. And if that does well, like that sort of expands to 10, 15, 20% of my overall portfolio. And then I'll invest that back into property again. And because property is like my thing and what I understand. And that lets me sleep at night. Like I'm learning it now, even with a bit of a bear market with shares and crypto at the moment, like knowing I just got to the level where I had enough in there that it sucks that it's like gone down a bit, but same thing, I'm taking a long-term view and it's not like keeping me up at night and not crippling me. So I know that I've got that right amount in there, which has been cool as well. So
I absolutely love that idea of like specification over diversification. I think that's like such an important message to communicate to people, that it's like, we all have this idea of, you know, we want to try a whole bunch of different things and we want to, you know, become financially free or get out of the system as quick as we can, like the Aussie Firebug model, right? And then, you know, that's totally cool, but I think you need to become the master of one thing before you start to look at all of these different alternatives, because it gives you a good foundation. It gives you a base level of knowledge, of assets, of information that you can then build off that, because a lot of stuff is transferable as well. So once you've figured out how to invest in property, then you can take that knowledge into a different asset or into a different investment and start building off that as well. So I think that's like one of the best things and probably one of the biggest reasons why you've been able to get to where you are at such a young age, man, which is so inspiring. And I know you haven't even really, begun. You've got so many cool things that you've got planned in the future, and just to watch your journey over the last 4 years, to the person that you've become now, the father that you've become, the type of lifestyle and the values that you live by is just, really inspiring. And it's just so cool to see that it can be done at such a young age with the right motivation, with the right strategy, and with the right, I guess, commitment.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks for that. It's kind words, but it does feel that way. Like, I never felt like that. Even if that 3 years, say, was a big sacrifice, which to me it wasn't, because I was loving it.
Yeah.
It let me get away from, like, maybe a circle of friends that I love, but, like, maybe wouldn't get me to where I want to be.
Yeah.
And now it's like, even if it was a sacrifice, that's still only like 3 years to sort of give up, which I didn't even see like that, to be able to now live in, like, my dream location and work 4 days a week, like, in something I enjoyed, start a family now, lets me be, like, a more present dad. And yeah, it's been the best thing I've ever done, and it feels like it's a story for, like, just an average. I see myself as just like a standard normal guy that can achieve this stuff. Like, no matter anyone that gets anywhere in life, the bloody haters are going to be like, yeah, but you had this. And to me, it's like, yeah, you moved to the country town. But it's like, I created that thing, and if someone wants to, like, I just can't stand it when people are like full playing like, oh, I can't do it because I'm in this situation. And it's like, everyone's got a situation. Some may be worse, some may be better, but it's like, no matter what, there's, like, always a choice there to, like, make some small decisions over time that can get you to where you want to be. I feel like we've made a few good decisions over that period to get us where we want to be, and
without a doubt,
it doesn't feel like it's been, like, too crazy along the way. Like, it doesn't feel like I've given up much at all. I've loved it.
That's why you are where you are as well, man, which is awesome to hear. So thanks heaps for sharing your journey, man. We'll continue on in part 2 as to, like, what the future holds for you and things like that, and how you're sort of shaping your lifestyle and investments moving forward. But I appreciate you kind of breaking down that journey over the last sort of 10 years and how that sort of unfolded, and a little bit about what you do with the business as well, man. So thanks heaps.
No worries. Good to chat.
Woo! That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting cool,
Bro.
Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that.
So nice, eh?
Oh.